Lemuel Gulliver is a middle-aged man living in a messy New York apartment. His mornings are quirky, he talks to superhero toys and dances in the shower, revealing his goofy, carefree nature. Gulliver works in the mailroom of a New York newspaper. One day he meets a new guy named Dan and they hit it off. Gulliver is actually Dan's boss, but that doesn't last long. Dan is quickly promoted to head of the mailroom, on his very first day. Gulliver, who's been stuck in the same job for 10 years, is left feeling humiliated. Dan even tells him he'll never move ahead in life because he's too scared to try. Feeling down, Gulliver sees Darcy Silverman, a journalist he's secretly loved for years. He tries to talk to her but panics. Instead, he grabs a random paper from her desk and walks out. Darcy stops him and asks if he wants to apply for a travel writing job. Nervously, he says yes. That night, he throws together a blog by copying articles off the internet. Surprisingly, Darcy loves it. She sends him on a real assignment, to the mysterious Bermuda Triangle, where ships are said to vanish. Eager to impress her, Gulliver agrees. He flies out the next day, gets a quick tutorial on using a boat and sets off alone. At first, the trip is relaxing. He reads robot magazines and downs cans of Coke, unaware of the adventure ahead. Gulliver falls asleep on his boat. After a while, he wakes up to see a huge wave crashing toward him. A violent sea storm begins. He quickly puts on a life jacket as the boat rocks wildly. When he turns around, he sees a giant sea tornado heading straight at him. The boat is lifted into the air and sucked into the tornado. The screen fades to black. Gulliver wakes up but can't move. He looks down and sees tiny men standing on his chest. Their leader introduces himself as Commander Edward of Lilliput. The camera pulls back to reveal a crowd of little people surrounding Gulliver, who's tied to the ground with ropes and wooden stakes. Commander Edward calls him a beast. Confused and scared, Gulliver breaks free from the ropes. Thinking it's all a dream, he closes his eyes. Edward yells at his soldiers to stop the beast. They hook onto Gulliver's pants and knock him out. When Gulliver wakes up, he's tied to a cart being pulled into the tiny kingdom of Lilliput. Curious villagers come out to see him. He's taken to the royal palace and presented to King Theodore. The king's daughter, Princess Mary, feels sorry for him and asks if the chains are really needed. Edward insists Gulliver is a spy from their enemy, Blefuscia. Gulliver finally speaks and asks where he is. The king's secretary, Jinx, proudly says he's in Lilliput, the greatest nation in the world. Gulliver thinks it's some kind of prank and jokingly asks the invisible cameraman to show himself. Later, Gulliver is locked inside a cave where he meets another prisoner named Horatio. Horatio says he was jailed by Edward for falling in love with Princess Mary. Edward arrives and hears them call him a lame ass. Furious, he threatens them with life in prison. Gulliver quickly lies and says lame ass means someone who is brave. Pleased, Edward takes them to a field where he makes Gulliver work using a special machine. Suddenly, 2 bells ring from the palace. It's a warning. Blefuscia has attacked. They've set the palace on fire and are trying to kidnap Princess Mary. Edward runs toward the palace and tells everyone to stay back because he wants to be the hero. But Horatio knows Edward won't make it in time, so he asks Gulliver to save her instead. Gulliver quickly defeats the Blefuscian soldiers and rescues the princess. But the king and his secretary are trapped in the fire. Gulliver, thinking fast, puts out the fire by urinating on the flames. Surprisingly, it works. The crowd cheers and the king is saved. As a reward, the king releases Gulliver and Horatio from prison and throws a big feast that night to celebrate. Edward is angry, he can't stand seeing Gulliver get all the praise. At the feast, the king asks Gulliver where he's from. Gulliver says Manhattan. Everyone thinks that must be a powerful kingdom and assume Gulliver was its president. Gulliver loves the attention and lies, saying he was known as President the Awesome. Everyone believes him, except Edward. The next day, the people of Lilliput build Gulliver a giant, luxury house. The king even sends people to search for Gulliver's old boat. Gulliver also asks for a theater big enough for everyone. Then he shows them a play about the Titanic and pretends it's the story of his life. The people are shocked and impressed. Edward, suspicious, asks how Gulliver survived drowning. Gulliver just says someone saved him. Later, Horatio asks Gulliver for help winning Princess Mary's heart. Gulliver agrees. At the palace, he hides while Horatio talks to the princess. Gulliver feeds him romantic lines from the song Kiss, and they work. Mary starts falling for Horatio. But then Edward shows up. He's supposed to marry the princess because he's the bravest man in the kingdom. Mary doesn't like him, but she doesn't know how to get rid of him. Somewhere else, the search party finds the washed-up boat with cans of Coke. Gulliver comes to the scene and finds his phone is still working. He has 12 voice messages from Darcy. Turns out she is furious to have found out about Gulliver's plagiarized article. She has to now sail on the same trail Gulliver came through to do the Bermuda Triangle research herself. Gulliver now doesn't want to go back to New York and face her, so he decides to stay in Lilliput permanently. Edward is not happy about the decision and tells the king he is suspicious of Gulliver. The king dismisses him, claiming that he trusts Gulliver. Because of his stay, the king gives Gulliver the title of the new general and demotes Edward to vice-general. A jealous Edward turns Lilliput's defense system off, making it easier for their enemies Blefuscia to attack. Blefuscian soldiers and their king see this and plan to attack Lilliput immediately. They approach the kingdom through waters and launch cannonballs toward Lilliput. Being the general, now it is Gulliver's responsibility to stop them. He nervously steps into the water and starts to splash it around. The cannonballs do not work on Gulliver, who is massive compared to them. Eventually, he defeats the Blefuscians and becomes the savior of Lilliput. The people from Lilliput fulfill all of Gulliver's wishes. They even build a model of Times Square so he would feel at home. They change their clothing to match that of Gulliver's. Soldiers are appointed to cut his hair and give him massages. One night, Edward barges into the princess's chamber. He claims that it is his right to come in any time because he courts the princess. The princess finally reveals that she doesn't love him and doesn't want him to court her anymore. An angered Edward leaves for Blefuscia to ask for help from their king. Edward's men have found the Build Your Robot book Gulliver had on the boat. The Blefuscian king agrees to help him build a robot using the book to battle Gulliver. Some days later, Gulliver is at the model Times Square when the bells of the palace ring, suggesting an invasion. Gulliver gets ready to battle tiny people but is surprised when a huge robot being operated by Edward stands in front of him. Edward challenges him for a duel. Gulliver has no way out but to accept. He tries to push the robot but it is way stronger than him. It picks Gulliver up with his pants and makes him accept his defeat. Gulliver also confesses that everything he said about him being the president is a lie. The king and the princess are surprised to have been betrayed by him. Edward sends Gulliver to a forbidden place called the Island Where We Dare Not Go, as a punishment. When Gulliver is left there, he is picked up by a giant little girl. Turns out the island is the home of giants. The girl thinks Gulliver is a toy and keeps him in her Barbie house, dressing him in girly pink clothes. Meanwhile, back in Lilliput, Darcy's body washes up on the shore. Gulliver had told everyone that Darcy is his princess back home, so Edward recognizes her and imprisons her. She meets King Theodore and his queen in prison, who have been captured after Gulliver's defeat. Horatio sees this and decides to travel to the island where we dare not go to get Gulliver back. He is minuscule on the island and manages to reach Gulliver safely. The little girl's dollhouse also has a skeleton of a dead US Air Force pilot. Gulliver uses the parachute to escape and fly back to Lilliput. He first goes to meet Darcy in the prison and confesses that he has a crush on her. She forgives him for plagiarizing the article and seems to be opening up to him. Gulliver has decided to challenge Edward for a duel. He doesn't want to prove his bravery anymore but genuinely wants to help Lilliput. The following day the two stand before each other, ready to battle. Gulliver wants Edward to give the kingdom back to King Theodore if he wins. But if he loses, Edward will destroy the kingdom altogether. The two fight and Edward overpowers him within seconds. Horatio runs to help him and manages to get inside the robot. He defeats Edward from inside, eventually depowering the robot. After that, Gulliver easily manages to defeat it, and the crowd erupts in cheers. Even Darcy celebrates the win. Because of Horatio's bravery, he is provided permission to court Princess Mary. The two finally kiss. But just then, Edward, who has reached the point of insanity, takes the princess hostage. But the princess, finally having enough of Edward, beats the traitor up in frustration. Darcy then kisses Gulliver for the first time. The Blefuscian king and Theodore are about to initiate the war again, but Gulliver stops them. He successfully helps to make peace between the rival island nations by reciting Edwin Starr's War, and finally he, along with Darcy, return to New York City on their repaired ship. Cut to a few weeks later, Gulliver has left the mailroom job and is a travel writer now. He and Darcy are in a happy relationship. Gulliver has just completed a travel assignment, and the movie ends as the two walk out of Darcy's office while holding hands. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.